Seattle PD knows Kurt Cobain was murdered, and they just don't care. Today, Rachel and I are going to go through the meeting that I had with the Seattle police in November. I took some really good notes, and we're going to go through all of my notes and go through pretty much everything that was said within that meeting. Keep in mind, these are notes, so we're not reading verbatim. It's not perfect, but it is very close, and the intent is there. And I would be more than happy to speak with the SPD if they have anything to say about, oh, we didn't say exactly that. I've got the notes, so we can discuss that. But I can assure you that this is
you were there.
Yeah,
pretty sure you know what was said.
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously, my advisor and partner, Mark Larson, was there with me. He is the former King County prosecutor. He was the prosecutor for 35 years. And much of course, what we brought in was based on his expertise. Being that Mark, decided who should be prosecuted and who should not be prosecuted for 35 years in King County, I think he has a really good idea as to what type of evidence would constitute reopening a case.
Yeah, because it's the prosecutor's office that decides whether or not they're going to carry a case forward or not.
Yes.
Police don't do that.
Yes. And we have also heard that the current prosecutor's office would be more than happy to run with the Cobain case as soon as the Seattle police reopen it, which they will not do because they give no fucks that Cobain's death was a homicide. And I will challenge them to prove me wrong and to come up with, make a statement, tell me why I'm wrong, and I will happily comment back and forth with them, retract my statement if they prove me wrong. But I think this is going to be really interesting for everyone. So basically, I think what we're going to try and do, and Rachel and I haven't practiced this at all, so we both have a copy of my notes. Yeah, so bear with us. I'm going to read my portion, and then I'll read my portion and Mark's portion because that's one side. Does that make sense? And then you'll read Chief Barnes. Actually, that might be me reading too much if I'm doing both me and Mark.
I'll say I think you and Mark did most of the talking.
Okay, so I'll read mine. You read Mark's.
Okay,
and then you can read Chief Barnes, and yeah. I think that makes sense. And again, if I'm going to tell you guys who was there. And I do want to say that this is the only time in 32 years that anyone has walked into the Seattle Police Department and had a formal meeting on the books. You can file a Freedom of Information request to find out about this meeting because it was a public meeting. And I don't think anyone argues that we weren't there, but there's proof that we were there. We did this. We brought in a 181-page binder
and
flash drive showing that Kurt's death was a homicide. And basically, we presented everything to them. Mark was being, I think, a perfect prosecutor. He was being very very non-biased, I was a little more passionate than Mark, so we kind of played back and forth. Mark's like, here are the facts. Michelle's like, you have to reopen this because kids are still killing themselves. And so I'm wearing a little rain cloud because that's how I feel right now about the Seattle police. And, very...
As always, I've got my Kurt hair.
So. Oh, that's perfect. And, that's how disappointed I am in their lack of accountability. They certainly, not one time in this meeting did they say, hey, we think that this was, that Kurt took his own life. They did not speak to any of the evidence. In fact, you're going to see that Chief Barnes admits that the shotgun could not have ejected a shell. You're going to hear Chief Barnes give us every excuse in the book as to why they're not going to reopen this. And I invite you to make your own conclusion, and I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts. So let's get started. So this was on November 4th, 2025. This was at the SPD headquarters, and Chief Sean Barnes was there. His assistant, Chief Nicole Powell, was there. Deputy Chief Andre Sales was there. Tim Burgess, who was the assistant deputy mayor at the time before the election, which I believe happened like on November 5th. So he retired after that, but he was there. And his assistant, Natalie, was also there. I would like to give a shout out to Nicole. I think Nicole Powell, I think she genuinely was interested in the case and was taking it seriously.
Yeah.
When we got the response from her 2 months later, it basically said, and I think we can read that. We'll read that in the next episode, but it basically said, we're sticking with the determination from 94 and the reassessment that Mike Szynski did in 2014. We're like, they did not look at our evidence.
No.
There was never any indication that they looked at the evidence. So, okay, so let's get started. And basically, we've got some introductions. And okay, so Chief Barnes introduced Assistant Chief Powell 3 years over our investigations bureau. Nicole came to us from New Orleans, and basically they said they were able to steal her away. And Nicole, at that time, had been in Seattle for 5 months, but she had heard of the Cobain case. And like I said, she was taking notes during the meeting. I have.
Well, and didn't you tell me that she was like the only one there that seemed to have actually done research before the meeting and had actually looked at the police reports and like got herself current on what she was about to sit in a meeting on?
Yes, exactly. I think this was actually her doing her job, and Chief Barnes, et cetera. They were just there for funsies. Tim Burgess, I know, was I believe was interested in the case as well. He I should not, I won't speak for him, but I believe he had an interest in the case, and simply looking at the science, I think he was intrigued. So it was really great that Tim was there, I thought. Okay, so we're all sitting down at the table. We have a setup. We have a screen up so that we can screen the videos that are one of our ballistics experts, Mike, did, and we end up showing a video there, which will come up. So if you want to go ahead and get started and sort of paraphrase basically what Mark says.
Yes. So he starts off by basically saying that he wants to be efficient with everyone's time because it was election season. It was literally election day, was it not?
Yes, it was November 4th or November 5th was election day. And this meeting, we had it set up for October, but the chief had to reschedule. So yeah, and sorry, I said this, right? This is the only time that anyone has sat down and done a meeting with the SPD.
Yeah, spoiler alert for the Freedom of Information Act request. There's an email where they literally say that this is the only time somebody's gotten a meeting with the Seattle Police Department for this case.
Yeah, and so we're very proud of the work that we did. And I know, again, I won't speak for Mark, but at some point, I'm sure Mark will do an interview. And he said that I did a really good job. And I'm only tooting my own horn because this is the only time I've ever done anything in this capacity before. So I think Mark and I played off each other pretty well.
Well, and if I may, as somebody, I wasn't at the meeting, but I was there.
Yes,
I think
Rachel came to Seattle.
No. I think you did a fantastic job, and I heard Mark giving you glowing reviews. So I know for a fact you did a good job.
Thank you, love. And yes, for anybody who doesn't know, Rachel came to Seattle from Cincinnati with our friend Bonnie. Hey, Bonnie. And drove me to the SPD, made sure that that everything went according to plan, and it was a team effort, and yeah.
And I think Bonnie we kept a very vigilant eye to make sure you weren't snatched or murdered on your way to or from the.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And we didn't tell anybody because we have all these people sort of working against us. We didn't tell anybody when this was happening or sort of what day was happening, et cetera, because we were quite sure that somebody was going to, try to pull something. So
try and ruin it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but
and that was part of the reason why. Sorry, I was just going to say that was part of the reason why I went in the first place, was because in case you weren't able to get over the border,
get across the border.
I mean, backup plan.
I've told people I don't have so much, as much as a parking ticket, but just in case, you never know what's going to happen at the border. If the border's really busy that day, you don't know what's going to happen. So it was like, if I can't walk in there, Rachel needs to walk in there with Mark and be my be my
I'm Michelle Jr. Just
yes,
picture me with
exactly.
pink hair,
Yes,
please.
exactly right. Yes, we'd make sure you dyed your hair pink the night before, and like, yes,
absolutely. Yeah. A little bleach, a little pink hair dye, be good.
Exactly.
Okay. So Mark explains how he's been retired for about 5 years. And then he got the opportunity to work with Michelle and was very interested that they're not walking in there with some sort of rabbit hole theory, like saying that they know who did what and all of that, how it happened exactly, but that they have an analysis of the crime scene and that they have been able to learn a lot through work with forensic scientists and experts and come to some determinations, and that's what they're bringing into them. And that they think it's the responsible thing to do to bring that into the police. But that it's also a series of questions for the police officers, or well, I guess for the chiefs, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that there are things that they think are worth looking into further. Sorry, trying to decipher your shorthands. So then from there, he asks you to introduce yourself.
Yes, perfect. And yeah, just to reiterate what you said, it's really a series of questions. We were not trying to say, this is exactly what happened. We know who was there. We know everything. Here you go. We were going, we think this raises enough questions that this case should be looked at again. And that's all, especially with Mark. I know on the podcast, I'm a lot more, this, and this, but when it comes to doing things like going into the SPD, we just wanted to bring in enough question, enough information and enough irregularities or inconsistencies, reasonable doubt that this should be reopened. And so I said, yes, absolutely. And I was writing this afterwards because obviously I'm talking. So I'm Michelle Wilkins. I'm Canadian. Thank you for having me in your country. I think I said something about being a big fan of Seattle. So very happy to be here. And then I wanted to let them know that I'm a podcaster, but also that this was not one thing has nothing to do with the other. So I think I wrote down, I'm a podcaster, but by necessity. And then I started talking about how 2 years ago at this time, I started looking into the Cobain case because I thought it was interesting. I watched everything about it, and I thought a lot of it was garbage, a lot of the other older conspiracy theories. So I thought, okay, let's actually look at the science rather than the conspiracy side of it. And then I kind of went on to talk about how we worked with numerous scientists, ballistics experts, and others, which we'll get into. And I think we've done something nobody has done in 31 years. And just sort of goes on with me talking about how I think our science that we're bringing on is really compelling. And like Mark says, we just would love for this to be looked at. That's all we're asking is look at it and, prove us wrong, basically. Yeah. And I even said here, and I know I put an asterisk, you guys have more information on the case than we do. We have photographs and some records, but there are limitations on, on what we've been able to do with the information we have.
Yeah. And Mark goes on from there to talk a little bit more about Michelle, explain that they have been talking for about a year, and that the real issue is that they were not interested in podcast material, not conspiracy theories. They weren't trying to make a show of this. That you don't have to go very far in the world to find, books, movies, etc. All of the speculation and conspiracy theories, all of that. But that Michelle said, we wanted to do something different. He explained that there's a witness that they're going to talk about, but that mostly they just want to determine whether the official scenario is scientifically plausible. So Michelle, for those of you who may be newer to the case, then he asked you to go into the background of Kurt and the weeks and time leading up to his death in Seattle in '94.
And again, Mark Larson, I think I've probably called him a rock star so many times that you guys are probably tired of hearing it, but he knows a ton of stuff. But when it comes to like nitty gritty of the timeline and like what happened to Kurt, you know, he always sort of defers to me. So I'll just go through again, paraphrasing, because I actually, before I went in, I had sort of little notes as to the points that I wanted to hit. So this is from my earlier notes. Kurt was a musician. He was 27 years old. He was a heroin addict. He had, and I, you know, when you're giving these notes, you just kind of, you don't want to be reading from your notes. So you're just like putting these little things and then expanding. So I probably expanded on these all a little bit, but these are the main notes that I was hitting. He had gone to rehab a few times and was trying to quit. He had a baby daughter as well that he loved and was trying to get clean for. In January of that year, he was touring in Europe. He became ill, had bronchitis and other health issues. Kurt was preparing to cancel the European tour. Now, at that point, he was in Rome. His wife came to meet him in Rome. Now, the other thing is that we don't talk about his wife very much at all in this meeting. There was never any point where we were trying to really even point fingers at people. The only time we really talk about Courtney in the meeting, because again, we don't want to come off as we know everything. We just want to give enough, you know, reasonable doubt, like you said. The one thing that where we had to bring Courtney up was in the note, because there was only one person who could have forged the bottom of the alleged suicide note. And, you know, we believe there's plenty of proof showing that that was Courtney. So we'll get to that. So his wife came to meet him in Rome and brought the baby so he could see her. There was an overdose. The overdose was not heroin, though. Kurt was clean at the time, which was proven by doctors. The overdose involved Rohypnol and champagne. After Kurt's death, that particular overdose would be framed as a suicide attempt. At the time, Kurt and management stated that it was an accident, while Kurt was still alive and could speak for himself. The doctor in Rome stated it was an accidental overdose. Kurt did not drink, and he had never taken Rohypnol as far as we know, so it was unusual. About a month later, he returned to Seattle. He decided to enter rehab. He checked himself into a rehab facility voluntarily. About 2 days later, he checked himself out and returned to Seattle. We're not entirely sure what happened during the days between his return and when he was found, but eventually he was found in the greenhouse above the garage. According to Detective Mike Szynski, Kurt Cobain had more heroin in his toxicology report than the police, had ever seen in Seattle at that time. And I hope we make a short out of this part. Detective Mike Szynski said that Kurt Cobain, 5'9", 120 pounds, who was a binge user of heroin. He was not a consistent daily, chronic, this is how I live user. He was a binge user of heroin, had more heroin in his toxicology report than they had ever seen of anyone else, any other death in Seattle in 1994. Through all of the heroin-fueled early 90s, that was the most they'd ever seen. And I really... well, it didn't impact them because they, you know, again, we know how this ends, but I was hoping that would really, that would impact them. So then Mark puts a pin in it. So now we go over to the notes that I have taken basically of Mark.
Yes. So Mark pauses you there. And he says that those are the facts that were leading up to the death. That there's a 27-year-old rock star, a massive amount of heroin, a shotgun near the body. The ME, the medical examiner's office, responded. Dr. Nicholas Hartshorn, who was the associate medical examiner at the time, attended. SPD responded. Don Cameron was there. Jimmy Yoshida was there. There was a note. There was a shotgun. There were syringes. And then, as the reports say, very, very quickly, there was an official determination that it was suicide.
Yeah. And I just want to interject super quickly that we are going to have a friend of the podcast, Neil Lowe, on with Brian, actually, very soon to talk about why they think the SPD responded this way and how quickly the suicide determination was made back in 94. So stay tuned for that as well. That will be coming up soon.
Yes. And then, so he says how quickly it was determined, and that that is not a crazy thing to conclude when walking into the scene, but that it led to a lack of other investigative work that might have otherwise occurred because they assumed it was suicide. That was me paraphrasing. I think part of the reason is that they, we've tried to analyze these issues and determine whether there are things that can still and should be done. At this point, Chief Sean Barnes interjects.
Yes. Now, before we get to Chief Barnes, I also want to impart that we also were not trying to say, you stupid pieces of shit, this whole system is corrupt. You fucked up in 94. Fix this right now. We were not trying to say, like, as you can see the way Mark says this, he's saying, we can see why that happened. We can see why that determination was made. We believe, though, that somebody had planned for that. It is our, well, I mean, we're not even saying that, to be fair. We're simply saying that may be so, but here's the new science, Now, you and I know that somebody set it up that way. So people already walked into that scene thinking that this person was on the edge. We know that was not even remotely true. But, so we wanted to be very clear with the SPD. Hey, we're not saying that, we're not saying that Cameron was a piece of shit. I'm saying that now. Well,
because he was.
Yeah, but in no universe were we going into that meeting saying, like, boy, the SPD really sucks. You did a terrible job. I mean,
you guys really fucked this one up.
Exactly. Like, now you need to make up for the shit you fucked up. There was nothing like that. We were extremely respectful, as you will again see. I certainly have not left anything out that would imply, any notes out that where we're saying like anything that could be construed as disrespectful or nasty or even implying guilt in that sense. We're literally saying we can see why you came to that conclusion, but take a look at this.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So go ahead and read for Chief Barnes.
So just to recap, Mark had just said, that they had come to that conclusion very quickly. Then Chief Barnes asks if he could cut in, and asks, when you say that they very quickly determine it, that means something different to me. A determination happens after investigation. Although I wasn't there at the time, as a trained investigator, we investigate every death as if it's a homicide.
You really should.
You really should. Then we make a determination. That was not done here. That's the whole point, Chief Barnes. The whole point.
So, it's really funny because Chief Barnes is almost everything the chief says goes along with what we're saying. And yet he still won't, give up. What's the word for that? He still won't concede that that means this was done improperly and needs to be done again. Even though he agrees with every single fucking thing we say about this,
I think people are really going to love his comments at the very end.
I really think they are. I really want everyone out there to know who is running the Seattle police. Their lack of accountability, and I'm going to tweet them a link to the podcast, of course, as soon as this is up. In fact, I might even send them. No, I was going to say I'll send them a private link before we put it up, but no, I don't want them to get to YouTube and have this shut down first. But don't worry, if this does get shut down anywhere, we will make sure it's up somewhere. They will not shut down. They will not silence us. So
and I feel like we forgot to say this in the beginning. The stuff for you and Mark is all like shorthands and notes. You were pretty consistent at taking, not verbatim on every single thing, but pretty accurate quotes from Barnes.
When I wasn't talking, so when I was talking, I was going sort of off of my notes where I said like I sort of had things written down, especially in the presentation. But when Chief Barnes or somebody else was talking, I was able to take very good notes.
No, I just wanted to make that clear why it's like a little bit more consistent and like actual sentences.
Exactly.
Like when it's Barnes. Okay. So then, 2 more sentences. So he, obviously is objecting and then says, so when you say that they arrived and very quickly determined it was suicide, what exactly are you saying? How do you know that? And then Michelle.
Okay. So, So I start talking about the medical examiner's report and the fact that the medical examiner's report states that the determination of suicide was based on the note and the police reporting that it was a suicide. So anybody can go in and look at the autopsy and see that it does not say come to the conclusion of suicide because, of organ necrosis or, that would come to the opposite conclusion, but because of something in the autopsy, simply because Detective Cameron stated it was a suicide. So I tell him that the death was we all know this, the death was reported as a suicide within 2 hours. They did not wait for the toxicology. And then I say this, can I add one more thing quickly about Kurt Cobain as a person? And I know I wrote this down right after the meeting because I was very passionate about this part. And, Barnes is really he really hits back on this. Like, we don't know the somebody's mentality when they're depressed. No, we don't. So don't use that to say he was depressed. Then if I don't get to say that we don't think Kurt was depressed, then you don't get to say that he was. So let's
goes both ways.
Yeah. So I just want to say this about Kurt as a person. If you remember the grunge scene, which some of you may not, it was very downbeat. People were sad and grungy and not showering. That's the image people had of Kurt, sad and whiny and depressed. And I said, we've spoken to many of Kurt's family members and friends, and that who is not who they described. That is pretty much who the media sold the public. That's who the public believed they knew. And now you can read what
and
Chief
then Barnes responds, do people describe people who are dead as being sad? Yeah, I think they fucking do.
Sometimes they fucking do. Yeah.
I mean, if they thought he killed himself, wouldn't they say he suffered from depression?
Well, but the point is,
the whole statement is idiotic.
Yeah, he's like contradicting himself. And then I said that's fair, and I acknowledge that. But there's only so far, I'm not sure what I was trying to say here, but only so far you can take what people thought from the outside. And then if you want to read from Mark after that.
Yeah. And so then Mark gets into, that, I mean, I guess that's, my point. I don't look back and think, wow, it was crazy for people to conclude suicide. It looked like suicide. What we're putting forward is the possibility that it could have been staged to look like suicide. That's clearly a theory we explored. I don't think anybody really explored it at the time. Nobody explored it at the time, and anybody that tried was shut the fuck down with quickness.
Exactly. Yep.
Nobody thought about whether something else could have been going on. Yeah, they determined, and that was it. There was no question. It was black and white. It was suicide. That's it. Case closed.
And as we've said about Detective Cameron, once he had said it was a suicide, there was no one in the precinct that was going against him. He was the big man on campus. Homicide. He was Mr. Homicide, and he was Ann Rule's buddy, and nobody was going against him. Okay, so now Chief Barnes asks another question.
Yeah, I'll say if you ever want to take over Chief Barnes, because I know I've probably got more with Mark and Barnes. Okay.
Yeah.
So then Chief Barnes asks if he can ask a question. When the case was reviewed, I want to say back 2015, maybe 2016, with homicide, so the homicide department, what would be different than the conclusion at the time?
Now, this is the Mike Szynski revisiting, which is such a fucking piece of shit lie. Now, of course, we don't. I mean, there was no revisiting. Szynski made it look more like a homicide, though, than they originally had by saying Kurt had way more drugs in the system. And then he says, oh, the drugs would have killed him. We know that. We just think he had enough time to do all that weird shit in between taking the heroin and using the shotgun.
Well, and seriously, he also literally said that his research was to read through the case file, look at the evidence, meaning what they had in their locker, read some books, and then he talked to like the gun guy.
Oh, and remember too that's where he got his Harry Potter magic, gun flipped in midair. And didn't the armorer say that was just like a complete, I was just like, I have no idea. So maybe that but no one actually tested that or really thought that 6-pound shotgun flipped in midair. I mean,
well, it's literally, if you know anything about physics, it's not possible. Period.
No,
Between
not
physics and the
possible.
way that guns function. Period.
Well, and
It's
Chief
not.
Barnes is going to admit that the way guns function does not match the way that this scene looked. So next, so
Yep.
Mark responds to Chief Barnes.
Yeah. So then Mark goes on to say that that's one of the good things to come out of this, that Mike Szynski did a review, and that, that there was concern with the 20-year anniversary, that it was going to be a big thing and that people were going to ask a lot of questions. So they said, hey, let's be prepared. He went through and read everything again. He did one other thing that was important. He developed some photographs that had never been developed before. Those were
Thank
useful.
God for those photographs. Yes, they
I
were.
literally, if nothing else in the entire world, that is the one thing that man has ever done right.
Does this help explain to people too why Courtney for 3 decades has demanded that the Seattle police destroy the evidence? Because even with those few photos, and let's be real, most of the photos, you can look them up, 2014 Kurt Cobain death scene photos, are just the cops standing around, fucking around, being dicks.
Yeah.
And I say that because, these are the guys that invited the electrician in to look at the rock star's dead body. And,
Yeah.
and so even those few photos are enough to show that it was a staged scene. I'm sure that they are tremendously upset that they, that they
Ever
let those
released
out.
any.
And that's why Courtney, demanded that they be destroyed.
Oh yeah. Well, and sealed and all of that stuff. But I'm sure most of all, Courtney's really pissed because I'm sure she didn't have a say in that. I'm
I'm
sure
sure
she is
not.
irate that they let some of them out.
And let's be real here too. We know that, people have argued this with me that Courtney didn't allow them to print that shirt with the alleged suicide note on it. Well, there was one person in charge who made the decisions at End of Music in 95, 96, and it wasn't Frances. She was 4 years old. And it wasn't Dave Grohl. People like to blame Dave. Oh, Dave is going to do that. Are you out of your mind? And why would Chris not have a say? Like, it's
in
bananas.
95 and 96, Dave wouldn't even talk about Kurt's death. Like, literally, watch a fucking interview. If anybody even tried to pose a question, he would get nasty and shut it the fuck down.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah. And so, no, Dave didn't do that. All you have to do is Google it. I mean, I've posted the screen cap many times. Who was in charge of End of Music? Who got all the licensing rights for Kurt Cobain in 1995, 1996? Courtney. Who released the t-shirt with his suicide note on it? Courtney.
Who's the only person that had a copy of his suicide note besides Tom Grant?
Exactly. And Tom Grant wasn't making any money off of that shirt.
No.
So she releases Cobain's alleged suicide note on a t-shirt, but she needs the SPD to destroy all the evidence because it's too harmful for her and her family. It's so sad. Yes. Give me a fucking break, you fucking murderous troll. Okay. So again, going back to the meeting where I was not this person, I was a very respectful person. Yes.
Okay. So then Mark goes on to say how they were useful, that it was kind of a reiteration of the attitude that Dan Cameron got it right, and that we don't need to worry about any of this, that, we got it right the first time, that whole shtick. Other than reading what was already there, he did very little that would be anything like what we've tried to examine. And then it's you, babe.
Oh, sorry. I was just blowing my nose.
No, you're fine.
Oh my God. My allergies. I keep thinking they're the worst in like February, March, but then they just keep going through the summer.
My nose has been running and I keep getting this weird like zing through my jaw over here tonight. I don't know what's happening. It might be the sour stuff in my drink, but
okay. I'm going to blame some kind of, voodoo from Courtney.
Dude, I'm about to get some banishing candles. Like, I promise you I am.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so, Mark was just basically like, other than Mike Szynski reading what was already there, he did very little that would, like, he basically didn't do anything. Yeah. He didn't examine anything, which is what we tried to do, examine things from a different point of view. The stuff that the SPD should have done in 1994 is what we did and brought in. But again, very respectfully. So then I ask if I can add super quickly. You probably read in Szynski's file that he said Kurt would have been dead within about a minute and a half with that level of heroin. And then Kurt allegedly would have had to use 3 needles to get that amount of heroin into his system. So he's shooting up 1 needle, 2 needle, 3 needles. Then he takes this very large shotgun. Now, what we've determined through our research and what the toxicology suggests is that he would have long been incapacitated before he could utilize the shotgun.
Yeah.
The autopsy, which we'll discuss later, is one of the reasons we don't believe the scenario is true. But even Szynski, and I believe this is a fairly close quote. This is me quoting Szynski, basically said that if he didn't use the shotgun, the heroin would have killed him. And, then I go on to say that Kurt had not much time. He was dying from heroin. So even Mike Szynski knew that Kurt would not have survived that amount of heroin. The question isn't whether he could survive. It's simply whether there was enough time for him to do all the things the SPD theorized that he did, which was basically reiterated at the anniversary. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead here to Mark starting to talk, but for all the things that they attributed to him after taking the heroin. So now if you want to read what Mark, I thought that I said all this, but Mark said it. Good job. That's, I love that Mark did this part. Okay, so then Mark talks.
And I'm pretty sure the exact quote from Szynski is that, if it wasn't for the shotgun, the heroin would have done the trick also.
Yeah. And so it makes a shit ton of sense to use the shotgun.
Yeah.
Use a 6-pound shotgun that he could barely wield. Okay. Yeah. We got it.
Yeah. While he's actively nodding out, between shots.
And loving his life, right? Let's be real. Opiates do not make you depressed.
Let me cap these back on and then shove this all the way over here out of my reach and roll down my sleeves and get this all positioned.
And I can't wait until my daughter's last thought of me is me blowing my fucking head off. That's so great. Yeah. Like, I love that for her. Fucking love that for her.
It's the whole thing is so, it's
so
like
maddening. Just like, you sit there. No, sorry, go ahead, babe.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, it's like, I'm trying to be polite about how I say this, but it's like anybody that genuinely believes, like that has looked at this evidence and does not see reality needs to learn how to use their brain.
I know.
To think independently and use logic and reason. I don't understand how you can look at the facts and not come to the conclusion that he did not do this.
And spoiler alert, Mark will say at the end that it's not one thing, but it's everything together. Like, okay, we don't know his mindset. Okay, maybe the gun flipped in midair. Okay, maybe it also somehow ejected a shell, even though that's not how that gun works. Okay, maybe no, like one thing, one weird thing that we know Cobain loved his daughter more than life, and that's how he would leave her, is ridiculous. Okay, mindset. I feel like Barnes even talks about that again, but I can't recall, just we don't know the mindset, but, which is angering in and of itself. But, and again, we could, have Dr. Richmond come back and talk about that, I think, or discuss other studies from Psychology Today. But it's so ludicrous. So fucking ludicrous. Like, I cannot, and no matter what I thought, I thought for my whole life that there was a lone gunman who killed John Lennon. And John Lennon is one of the great loves of my life. I am a Beatles fan before anything. And finding out that that's not what happened to John when we did that amazing podcast, I go where the science goes. Like I changed my opinion on Mark David Chapman and what happened to John Lennon because the science shows that the shot from behind is not what killed him. So whether, I still certainly haven't figured all of it out. I don't imagine that anybody ever will, but it's like, you have to go, growing up, I thought Marilyn took her own life. Now there's perhaps the thought that, at least if she did try to take those pills, we know that they staged the scene after the fact. They came in, stole her diary, mucked with shit, and then staged the scene. Like, I don't understand how these people and why they're so strongly determined to hold on to this narrative when it's like, okay, but like you can be wrong. It's okay. Like when we say something on the podcast and then we find out 6 months later, like, oh, that's actually wrong. Oh, we got that wrong. Then we have to go where the truth is and apologize for getting something wrong. And those things happen, the lack of aspirated blood in the lungs. That wasn't something we even talked about because we hadn't talked to Dr. Sokos. We didn't know. So now we have to go and let's add this. We have to go where the science leads. And so I don't know why so many of these people are so stuck on something that doesn't affect their lives at all. Like,
I think mentally they have some sort of like dependence on it being this certain way.
Yeah.
Because something about their life or their mentality or their whatever is dependent on it having been this.
And believing in authority and believing that no one, because authority. Okay. Yeah, the police, they always do the right thing. There are some great police out there. And another thing too that I find really funny is I think people think that, I always get, you believe in QAnon too? Like, no. Like what?
Don't.
No. This isn't a political issue. It has nothing to do with whether we're conservative or liberal. I mean, all I can say is that I'm Canadian. Take that for what you will. No, I don't believe that. Personally, I do not believe in Pizzagate. That one thing has nothing to fucking do with the other. Where's the science for Pizzagate? We have 181 pages proving this was a homicide with really good credentialed scientists. Somebody said to me the other day, but she tried to sell her story to the Daily Mail, so how can we trust her? Sell my story to the Daily Mail? The fuck? I didn't get any money for that. Like what?
No.
And I've never tried to sell anything. It's news. Stacy from the Daily Mail is their science writer, dumbass. She read through the peer-reviewed published paper and thought, holy shit, this needs to get out to people. And so I then did an interview with her to talk about the science that we did. I mean, these people, any excuse will do. Not like, have you ever heard one person say, here's where Brian Burnett is wrong? Because I haven't heard one person say that. I've heard them say, well, he was a marine biologist. Michelle's a fucking idiot, blah, blah. I've heard all these, I've heard the insults, but I have never heard, well, here's actually how the blood got on the bottom of Kurt's shirt.
Well, that's because psychologically, when you cannot tear down their facts.
The evidence.
You can't argue the evidence. You can't argue the facts. You can't outwit them. You can't outsmart them.
Yeah.
You just tear them down and insult them.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, I might insult somebody. I might call somebody a daft fuck and then tell them where they're wrong. I will insult someone if they're being a twat to me. Yeah. I will insult them too, but I will also engage with the evidence. I will never post something without engaging in the evidence unless they don't post any evidence, which they mostly don't. So there's nothing to engage with. But yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why I keep yawning. I don't know what the heck that's about.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So now we are back to Mark. Yeah.
Yes. And we're probably going to have to do this in a few.
I think we're probably going to do this in 3. And I feel like I might, usually I cut this episode into smaller pieces. We'll cut an episode into smaller ones, but I think we should just put up the whole thing because this will probably end up being, if we're on, there are about 30 pages of notes and we're on about page 9, we're probably going to have to do it in 3 episodes. And then if we cut it and then people have to scan through and find 6 episodes, I think that's going to be too complicated for people. And we love you guys. We don't. Yes. And we will make a playlist. Okay.
Make it as easy as possible.
Yep. Exactly.
So then Mark responds, so when you reduce what we've learned from the police files and everything else, the SPD theory of the case, which was reiterated at the 20-year anniversary, is essentially this. Kurt is alone. He writes the note. He injects a huge amount of heroin. Many people believe that amount would require multiple injections. Then after taking the heroin, he rolls down his sleeves. He buttons his sleeves. He puts the caps back on the needles. He places the needles back in the box. The drugs are put away. Then he retrieves the shotgun and manipulates it into position to take his own life. Now, none of that takes 10 minutes, but it takes some time. And there are some curious choices involved. The gun is found in a particular... Yeah, very curious. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, I'm about to die, but let me make sure that my sleeves are buttoned and my needles are put away neatly.
And while I am in this incredible state of, ecstasy on this huge amount of heroin, feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. It's wild. Oh, put the caps on the needles in case someone comes in and jabs themselves with them. In case my daughter, when she finds me,
needles.
It's wild.
The gun is found in a particular position. I love that wording too. A particular position.
And I mean, I think this is what Mark said.
No,
I was writing it down. So
well,
sounds
they're very
like something
short little
Mark
bursts.
Said. Yes,
they're very short little bursts. So I think they are.
Mm-hmm.
I was just about to say, he's like a words, like the way that he uses his words.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Beautiful.
Yeah, totally.
There's an ejected shell from the gun. The gun is found across his body. His left hand is wrapped around the barrel. Then, here we go. Chief Barnes. The shell. It was birdshot. Mark. Yes, birdshot. Barnes. I've only shot one shotgun. The shell doesn't eject until you rack it.
So let's just go over that again. Kurt Cobain's shell, the shell from the gun, Kurt Cobain is found in a supine lying down position. The gun is pointing upwards. The ejection chamber is on the right. The shotgun shell is on the left, on his jacket, kind of by his head. Not only should the shell not have been to the left, it should not have ejected at all. Is that what you're telling me that Chief Barnes is saying before we did not bring up the shell not being there, correct?
Correct. The shell doesn't eject until you rack it.
So did Kurt Cobain shoot himself in the mouth and then rack the shotgun? And then jumped over to the other side.
Yeah, pretty sure no. Pretty sure that's not how that works.
So I
unless you believe in like zombie, like immediate resurrection and then like immediate, you know.
Well, he was Gen X Jesus, but even Jesus took 5 days, right?
Yeah, but Kurt, he only 5 seconds and then he gets another 5 seconds,
I mean, he wrote in utero, so 5 seconds is pretty good. I think that tracks, babe. But so I want to say this again. Chief Sean Barnes, the chief of the Seattle PD, told us before we told him that a shotgun shell will not eject unless the gun is racked. Cobain's hand was on the forward barrel of the gun. It could not have been racked. Nothing could have happened because right in the SPD report, his hand was wrapped around the barrel of the gun. We did not tell Chief Barnes this. He told us that. He told us that there should be no shell. Sorry. And yeah. Okay. No, so let's finish on, once we're done this part of Mark, I think then we're going to actually show the video. So let's go ahead and finish the stuff with Mark. And then the next episode, what we should do is actually, I'll get John to edit in the video of Mike showing the shotgun not ejecting. We'll show that at the beginning. So guys, we're going to show you shotgun shell at the beginning, not ejecting. And then you'll see basically what the SPD saw and we'll go on from there.
Perfect.
Okay.
So then Mark responds, we're getting there. That was the theory that was put forward. So we started asking whether that actually makes sense. Here are the things we're leaving you with. My advice to Michelle was this: if we're going to use experts, let's use forensics experts with long histories in state crime laboratories. No celebrity experts, no TV experts. We talk to people we trust and ask them who they trust. 2 of the reports are authored by people with extensive state crime lab experience. They're not people looking to get their names associated with Kurt Cobain. In fact, they seemed hesitant about it. They seemed very hesitant about it.
Yeah.
We also have a multidisciplinary review. And finally, probabilistic analysis. But let me talk about the gun. We went out and bought the exact same model weapon to the best of our ability, same length, same model, old Remington. The recoil system is important. And for anybody that doesn't know, it's literally the exact same gun, the same model, it's.
So Mike, our gun guy, so we had 2 gun guys, like he said. So we had Aaron and we had Mike, and Aaron is the one with tons of court experience. Mike is the one who went out and he bought the exact same shotgun. Like he changed all the pads, like he changed everything. It's
put the compensator, like everything.
Yes, he put everything exactly right. It was literally, we can show you the bench notes that we have from the shotgun. Our shotgun compared, well, it's in Brian's review. So it's in our forensic report. It's in there. So Mike being a Nirvana fan, so Mike's the first ballistics expert we work with. Being a Nirvana fan, he's fashioning this gun to be exactly the same as Kurt so we can do these tests. And then Aaron flies to Mike's place. Aaron, who has all this court and ballistics experience. I think he was working with the SPD in 94, right? I believe Aaron actually had an association with the Seattle police back in the 90s. Yeah. And so again, going like, does Aaron really want to, he definitely does not want to, there was no question. He was never like, yes, let's prove that like the gun didn't work the way in fact, it was Aaron and I were sort of, we would butt heads.
You guys butted heads. Yeah.
A lot to go like, okay, but Aaron, like, we need to like talk about this part, etc. When Aaron and Mike did the tests, Aaron and Mike both stated, Aaron signed off on this, that no shotgun shell should have ejected. Well, I mean, Barnes already knew that. So these are not people that wanted to make a name for themselves. They are people. And then Jim Green, who's the other expert who did the handwriting, which of course we will get to, he doesn't, give any fucks. He's like 75 years old and I mean, not quite retired, but to the point where he's, he doesn't take a ton of active cases. He was recommended to us from people in the Seattle, in the, I guess not forensics, but in the authorities, like, he's worked on a lot of cases there. And so we were, Jim was recommended to us. This was not somebody who came to us and said, hey, I think I can prove that Cobain didn't write the suicide note. This was somebody who we again went in with people who the SPD has worked with in the past and they know and should trust because they've worked with them many times. And both Aaron and Jim Green are those people.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And I also want to add, I shouldn't say this, but I feel like Aaron almost begrudgingly admitted that we were correct. Like, he was forced to admit that, no, you're right. This does not work the way that we thought or that the case says that it should.
Yeah, I would say that I haven't really, I would say that on a few Zooms, Mark was like, okay, Michelle, let's move on. When I was talking to talking to Aaron, he and I definitely did not see eye to eye on certain things, but the fact remains that he could not deny that shotgun worked that way. So, yeah.
I remember you like angry texting me during those, like, I need you to get me this, please, for the love of God, let me shut this fuck up. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing, because we're talking to, I have 2.5 years or 2 years at this point of my life has been like full-time work on this case. And so anybody out there, you do a job for 2 years and you work 40 hours a day, but you're also like autodidactic and obsessed with this thing. So you're just like constantly, so more than that person, even though they are an expert in ballistics, but and I know fuck all about guns, but I know enough about Cobain's gun to go like, okay, but you're not remembering this thing, and then having to get you to find me something to go in and bring
Well, that was my favorite part, is like, you knew exactly what it was. You're like, just find me the thing that says this. And I'd be like, got it. Hang on. Because I would know exactly what you were talking about and just go ahead and find it and send it.
And, that's teamwork makes the dream work. And,
absolutely.
And we should probably get Mike to come back on too and talk a little bit more, because I think that would be really interesting. But so Aaron goes to Mike's house and they do all these tests over a few days, and they do some tests with some gel dummies and, blood spatter, although we know that obviously blood spatter from a dummy without circulation is different than but so we did all these tests, and Aaron did have to begrudgingly admit that the shotgun works exactly the same way that Chief Barnes said it worked. So, and again, bringing in these experts, you bring in Mike, who I will go to the mat for this, is incredible. And Mike, I mean, is an incredible expert.
He knows his shit, like upside down and backwards.
Yes. And, there are things people want to believe that Cobain couldn't have reached the trigger. We can't prove that he could or couldn't, but what we know is that Mike could just reach the trigger, and he's the same height as Kurt, and he could just reach it if he angled it. So while we would like to pretend, that would help our case. If Kurt couldn't reach the trigger, then it's proven that he couldn't have done it. But that's not the case. So we can't. And Mike was always testing things 1,000 times to make sure that even if it was something that we thought would help us, we can't just state that if it's not true. Like and Mike was so,
this is the truth, and this is what I found, regardless of whether it hurts or harms the case.
Yeah, exactly right.
And weren't there certain positions that he said were extremely painful in order to be able to reach?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, going back to an earlier video that we did just a few weeks ago, I think talking about, if Dylan is the one who went in and bought this gun with Cobain at Stan's, why does he pick up a shotgun why does Kurt let him buy a gun that Kurt might not conceivably be able to reach the trigger on? Because again, when you look at that photo, Kurt's seeing Dylan pick up a gun, go, hey, Kurt, you want this one? Does Kurt measure it to see if he can get it in his mouth in the gun store? Like, I
No,
feel
because it's going
like
to look too long.
yes. Yeah. And I feel like people in the gun store would be like, well, Cobain was measuring the gun to see if it could fit in his mouth before they bought it. So,
yeah.
I mean, and obviously Dylan has said numerous times, I mean, if I thought he was going to use it to take his life, I wouldn't have bought it. And I know that's a hedge, but at the same time, nobody is ever saying that. It just makes no sense for him to buy a gun that long. Now, there are many, he had to buy a shotgun, not a handgun, or there would have been a waiting period. But we also know that there are many, many shorter shotguns that they could have purchased. So again, to choose a gun that long, if your only purpose for it is to put it in your mouth, without being able to measure it beforehand, is ludicrous.
I think it's the almost longest that model comes in, because it comes in a 30-inch and his was a 28-inch barrel.
Yeah, his is the second.
But then he added a 4.5-inch compensator on it.
Yeah. I know, it's wild. And when you see Szynski holding it, and he's such a big guy compared to Kurt.
He's 6 foot something. Yeah.
We should get someone with Photoshop to do that. That would actually be really interesting. Again, not to say we know Kurt could maybe reach the trigger. I mean, we don't know Kurt's arm span. So somebody else who's 5'9" could reach it. You could dislocate your shoulder trying to reach it. I don't know. I think we have to assume that he may have been able to reach it. But, just to show the size difference between Kurt and Szynski, I think
was almost as big as he is.
I know. It's ridiculous. It's wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little bit more. So then he goes on to say the recoil system is important. When the weapon is unobstructed and shouldered, it fires and ejects the shell. Remember, the SPD theory is that the shell was ejected normally. Our testing of the same model did not demonstrate that. When you place your hand on the barrel, almost any pressure prevents ejection. It's similar to limp wristing a pistol. The gun simply doesn't cycle. We've tested 2 different guns. We worked with very reputable experts. And then I'll steal yours really quick because you ask if you want to show the video. Mark agrees. And then the video is shown.
Perfect. So tune in next time for the video. And if you've made it this far, we really appreciate it. And again, if you could do all the things, this is the video that we had told you about that we were going to make, basically telling you exactly why the SPD won't reopen the case. And
the biggest stuff is at the end. And I know that's a pain in the ass, but I promise you it's so worth it.
Yes, exactly.
It is.
And so, we know that our channel is so niche that nobody who has a mild passing interest in Kurt Cobain wants to sit here and watch me and Rachel blather on for an hour about the minutia of this case. Something like the mini documentary, even the storage incident, et cetera. People, the casual
watch.
Casual, someone with a casual interest in Cobain, that's interesting to them. But the weeds of this, like, for example, a case, I get in the weeds of everything, like Maura Murray, Black Dahlia, like all of those I would watch. But if there's a case
but we're
out there,
those kind of people, and if you don't know anything about this case, you're not going to come in and watch people that know everything go into all these little details that you don't know what they mean, and
you just like true crime in general, or okay, so for example, if someone was doing what we're doing, but with say like Chris Cornell, I know people think that there's something weird there. I don't know enough about it to comment, but say somebody did something about that, I'm not sure that I would also get into the weeds about it because I'm already in the weeds of this case. So it's like, I don't know if I have enough, to get into that. So I completely understand that there are a lot of people out there who might watch, they might watch a documentary about the death of Kurt Cobain, and they may believe that Kurt Cobain's death was a homicide. I mean, most people, I think, do believe it was a homicide now. I never run into anybody who believes he took his own life. Not anybody.
No. Literally nobody.
Yeah. And so besides like weird internet trolls who love Courtney, which is that's a life choice, my friends.
You might want to go to a therapist.
Yes.
Sorry to break it to you.
Yes, exactly. And really re-examine some things. But I mean, Manson had followers in prison.
Followers.
Even Charlie Manson had a girlfriend. Yeah. So there's an excellent Mr. T Experience song called Even Hitler Had a Girlfriend, which if I haven't sent to you, I will send you because it's very clever and makes me kind of...
You shared Mr. T with me, or the Mr. T Experience. Sorry.
Yeah. No, Mr. T is, we call him that. That's good. MTX, okay. Mr. T.
I immediately go to like the actual Mr. T. Like,
oh, yes, totally. Yeah.
But you've shared that with me, but not that song. So
yes. Okay. I will send that to you. If you haven't listened to Mr. T Experience out there and you like really clever pop punk, you will probably love them. Yes. Dr. Frank. But the other thing I was going to say was just that. So we don't get that many views on an average video. An average video, we might get 5,000-6,000 views. Yeah. But if you could share this as far as you can, I know it's, like we said, I know it's pretty niche. But the more people that watch it, the better, the more people who understand what happened to Cobain. And I think now what we have to do is make sure that the SPD knows that they will be held accountable for this. We're not going anywhere. The meeting was just the beginning. And they need to know that we're not going anywhere. So if we, if they look at this and they go, who cares? Like 4,000 people have seen it. Ugh. What? Like, you know what I mean? Like that was a really big, like, never mind.
I was about to say that was fucking priceless. I'm sorry.
So they're just like, who cares? But, they come and see it and even 25,000-30,000 people have seen it. That starts to look a little different. I know that's sort of that's a wild, that would be amazing if we could get that out to that many people. But, not holding our breath, but anything you can do to help spread the word, we would love it. So please do. And we still are hoping that the article we were telling you all about comes out as well. So fingers crossed, we should know about that in a few days. And we appreciate you guys waiting so that we could make sure that the article had a chance to be pitched before we did this. So yes. But we have lots more coming up on the meeting. We have more FOIA stuff we're going to go through, like I said, with Neil and Brian and, some other really interesting forensic stuff. So we will talk to you all soon. Please do the likes, the subscribes, all that stuff. Do you hate when people ask that on a video? Somebody was saying recently, that's so stupid when people do that. And I'm like, yeah, well, we don't usually do it, to be fair. No, we don't usually, but
yeah.
Yes. So
they'll get over it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have been accused of many worse things than asking for likes and subscribes. So
just a little bit.
A little bit. Yes. Instigators, paranormal instigators. So, okay. Thanks everyone. Love to hear your comments. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on the meeting. And we will catch you all very soon.
Yes.
Bye.